Hey everyone, welcome to Quilt-Cam on a beautiful Sunday afternoon in September, North Carolina style. It's gorgeous outside, but I've been in the basement all day. I'm working, I guess, every spare minute. I was going to say sun up to sundown, but there's some other stuff going on there, and sometimes it happens beyond sundown as well. But as many of you know, I've got a quilt photography deadline coming up, which means that I can't be writing quilt directions when the quilts are not in my hot little hands, because this is how I work on things. Hi, everybody joining. So glad to have you with us. So I've been really busy and kind of quiet behind the scenes. You haven't seen a lot of social media coming through as far as what I've been working on since I left the cabin last Monday. I was able to share some of what I was working up on there. Also behind the scenes, we've got this year's mystery season ramping up. So there's been a lot of stitching and sewing and planning and creating going on behind the scenes, trying to get that ready so that we're ready to go live with the mystery the day after Thanksgiving. Now, for those who haven't participated in mystery season this year or in years previous with me, and this year is your first one, things to know. I get asked all the time. In fact, my inbox on Facebook is flooding all the time. When's the mystery? When do we get this? When do we get that? When is the yardage? When is the colors? And it's always the same routine every year. You'll get your yardage requirements by the end of October. I'm going to be in China from October 20th to the 30th, right around in there. So there may be a couple of days delay as I get off my jet lag and travel. We never know if flights are delayed, if I get back down or back home later than expected. There are never hard and fast delivery dates of the yardage and the colors and the background information. That has to fit in with my life. And I can tell you right now, there's no time to write it all ahead of time before I go to China. I need to have the quilt top done so that I'm sure there are no snafus in the process and that we end up with inaccurate yardage amounts. I hope you can understand where I'm coming from on that one. However, the first clue always goes live the day after our Thanksgiving here in the USA, which would be the 4th Friday of November. That morning, that first Friday, or that 4th Friday of November, the first clue, the first clue will post. Do I give the time when it will post? No, it's a mystery. It has to fit in with my life. Now, there are some things that I have going on in my life at this time that may impact our mystery. So you're just going to have to ride the waves with me. I had a trip to Oregon planned for last week that had to be postponed to the first week of December. And that is because the forest fires are so bad. If you haven't looked up the Chetco Bar fire that's happening around the Brookings, Oregon area, give it a Google. With all of the hurricane activity that's happening here in the US, these fires that are in the Northwest have not gotten the publicity that they deserve, and they're devastating. Hundreds of thousands of acres are burning, and air quality is bad, and people are on level 1 evacuation status and just waiting for calls whether they get to stay or go. It should be getting better. We're getting into the rainy season. The hot, dry summer days are going to be ending, and we've moved that trip to the first week of December. Now, that means that I will do what I can to write those posts ahead. If there is anything that needs to be updated or edited, you're going to have to be patient with me there, because there are certain things I can't do when I'm on the road, and I will just do the best that I can. So all I want is for everybody to put themselves into my shoes and realize that it's a quilt. It's not a life or death situation. We're sewing together for enjoyment, and it's nothing to get stressed out of it. So I'm going to give you the heads up right now that this mystery may not end on New Year's Day or at midnight, on New Year's Eve at the stroke of midnight with the last clue going live. We may continue it partway into January just to fit it all in. And I want it to be a pleasurable experience for everyone. Things that I can't do. Those who are shopping at Quilt Festival in Houston know you may not have your yardage requirements and colors ahead of time. Okay, I go through this also every year. The object of this project is to shop your stash first and then add to it. Some things that you can always, always, always catch up on and stock up on would be your neutrals. You know how much I love neutrals. There's always going to be neutrals. I've never done a quilt that doesn't include neutrals yet. And if I were to do one, I would tell you, don't stock up on the neutrals this year. We're not going that direction. So that's something that you can do. But otherwise, I want you just to relax with it and have fun with it and realize that you may have to do some shopping when you get home, and you can't buy everything at Quilt Festival. You can't buy things while you're in Paducah. I got emails just last week saying, I'm going to be in Paducah for fall Paducah. What are the colors? I'm not giving them yet. We just can't. So please relax with it. I know you're excited. Help me enjoy the process by not asking ridiculous things. So that's what we're doing. So today, for those who are with me for Quilt-Cam Live on Facebook for their very, very first time, I want to welcome you. This is my basement studio. This is where I do all of my sewing when I'm home. And it's kind of a long, narrowish room. So I've got a couple of machines set up that I sew on from time to time. And my long arm is on the other side of the room over here. And I work myself around, and I really don't have space for a design wall. So I use the design floor a lot. And that means there's usually dog ears and thread and fabric piles and all kinds of creativity going on. It would never make it into Country Living magazine, but this is where I enjoy spending my time and where I get most of my quilts put together. I am working, as you can see in the quilt here, or on the table here in the machine. This is a border section that I was short 5 units to be able to finish this border. And I was working on this at the cabin over the past couple of weeks. And I've added one more. This was my leader and ender while I am getting ready to sew some sugar bowl blocks. But I've got to cut 5 more center squares and the corner triangles to go on them. And I had hoped that I could get those cut out before starting Quilt-Cam, but we got down to 2 minutes before we were supposed to start, and I said, oh, to heck with it. I'll just do that later. I do have a quilt finish, and if I can turn the camera, hang on just a second. You're going to get a little tour. Grab this camera off the laptop and show you what's on my long arm here. This is my last year's Leader and Ender Hourglass Challenge, and I got it, finished the quilting last night, got it off the machine, got it all trimmed, and I just love the texture of the quilting on this one. I'm watching the screen on the laptop as I try to point this camera and look over my shoulder. So those of you who have not participated in our Leader and Ender challenges before, this is what you can do over the course of the year. This is a one-patch quilt. Everything is quarter square triangles sewn into hourglass units, and then those are joined into bands that are sewn around the quilt center, like a bigger picture frame around a smaller picture frame, kind of like those Russian stacking dolls. I'm going to put this camera back. I see all kinds of happy faces and hearts and thumbs up from people showing up, so glad you joined us. Now, somebody asked just yesterday, well, is there a reason why you made that with hourglass units instead of half square triangles? You could have made it with half square triangles, but you wouldn't have been able to do the color bands around the center working with just 2 colors at a time. If you're working with half square triangles, you'd be working on the diagonal, building the quilt from corner to corner across the quilt. So you'd have multiple colors and weird configurations if you were trying to do it with half square triangles. I just found it easiest to work with the quarter square triangles, and they're very simple. The free pattern and layout for this quilt is found under the free patterns tab at the top of my blog. And we used 2-inch strips and the essential triangle tool. The green lines on the essential triangle tool are for cutting quarter square triangles. And when you cut these specifically with this ruler in matched pairs, those pairs just feed right under the machine. They're easily sewn into hourglass units. You just remove the dog ears and then spin the seams on the back of the hourglass unit. So the hourglass units will nest with each other no matter which direction you turn them. So you'll find that under the free patterns tab. Now, if you haven't jumped in on this year's, it's not too late. My project is at the cabin waiting for me to get back to it. It's simply 4 patches and a strip unit from 1.5-inch strips. So you've got 4 strips and 3/4 patches, and you've got that block made. Two different kinds of blocks because the 4 patches are in different orientation, so that when you twist and turn the blocks, they make a stair step. It's called checkerboard rails, and you'll find that under the free patterns tab as well. Is anybody joining in with me on this one? It's going to be a really cool one, and there's options to set it either straight so that the stair steps go up and down the quilt, or you can put that one on point, and then it makes these wonderful chevrons of checkerboards and overlapping rails, and it's really cool as well. What else have I got on my table today? My couple of sugar bowl blocks. Last time we did Quilt-Cam, I lost internet about 40 minutes into the feed, and the internet power in my house stayed off for overnight. It was on the next morning, but for most of the night it was off, and there was no way to go back and add footage to that Quilt-Cam episode that had closed. So these are still waiting, and I'm going to adjust the camera just a little bit so you can see my machine. I've also got binding for the next the project that I just showed you, the Hourglass Leader Challenge. And guess what I just noticed that I did? Before I can take anybody's email photos or comments, I'm sitting so far away from the laptop that I can't even read the text on the screen right now. I'll get to that after we've finished our feed. But if I'm going to share your picture during Quilt-Cam, I've got to grab my phone, and it's plugged in at the front of the room. So this is your first 3-second break. Grab a drink, turn the page on whatever you're reading, whatever it is. I'll be back in 20 shakes. I also grabbed my other border units that are ready to go on that 9-patch quilt as soon as I get this last border made. Can you see these fabrics? These are Shui Shui Indigos. They're from South Africa, and I absolutely love them. It's a wax resist dye process. So these are really, really cool fabrics to use. 3 of the borders are ready to go. Just one of them is just 5 squares short of a border length. That sounds like my life. Just throw those over there. Okay, so we're going to check in and see who's joining us. If you wanted to send me a picture, you need to email that to me. My email address is quiltville@gmail.com. And while I can't get through all of the emails that come in during Quilt-Cam, I will try to get to as many as I can, and then perhaps answer the others afterwards, time permitting. So let's go right to the inbox. In fact, I'm up to 63%. So yeah, my phone was down on battery, so here we are. Let's see who's joining us today. So we have Carol Smith with her Wonky Wishes quilt. And she says, I thought I'd show you what I've been working on. Pieced with my 301 just today, and I'm quilting on my 201. This is the first time I have machine quilted, just making diagonal lines that cross in the centers of the 4 star blocks. I also stitched in the ditch with invisible thread along both edges of the sashing throughout. She also asks if I think this is enough quilting. Wow, that looks really pretty. So here's her Wonky Wishes. Wonky Wishes is a standalone pattern available in the Quiltville store. It comes as a little printed booklet in a really nice little envelope. Which way do I move this? Away from my face. But that looks really good. I think that the thing that concerns me the most with this one is that while she's got quilting through the star blocks, the patches on the sides of the star blocks have no quilting in them whatsoever. And so depends on how hard you're going to be using this quilt. I like the quilting to cross every patch so that the patches are anchored. Patches that just float out there with no quilting in them, it ends up being like a tied quilt, and those are the areas that can come undone or unstitched. Let me biggie size this a little bit, and I'll show you what I mean. Can you see that she's just got quilting going just as an X through the large star blocks? And I think it needs a little bit more. So maybe she needs to come through each individual star that makes the 4 stars the other way as well. So she'd be quilting a diamond through that area, I think more quilting is always better. And same with the border. She's stitched in the ditch, but there's nothing in between the pieces. Here, let me see if I can figure this here. So she's stitched in the ditch between the borders and the blocks themselves, and she's got her basting holding down the outside edge of the borders, but all of those rectangles aren't anchored down, and I'd love to see something in there. This is her first time machine quilting, and so maybe she'll go back and add something later, but I would at least do some parallel lines or something, or each of those border sections quilt a big, long, elongated X, so that you have some quilting in those patches so that the quilt will be anchored a little bit better. That's absolutely beautiful. Your piecework is gorgeous. I love it. Cindy says, yay for Quilt-Cam. I'm working on the Vintage Moments quilt. Lemoyne stars are done, and the center paper pieced fans are now paper piecing fans now while watching Quilt-Cam. And she says she's got some much needed rain in Missouri. And she sent a picture as well. Oh, that is just beautiful. So she's got her feathered star center right there, sharing with us what she's sewing on. And those beautiful colors are just gorgeous. I love all of those vintage looking prints. That's lovely. Let's do one more. Okay, this one's from Nicole Conrad, who says, Leader Ender Project. Love your designs. My Leader Ender project is your twirl around quilt. I just love my neutrals, just a sampling. So she is cutting. At least she didn't take her picture while I was out grabbing the phone and the borders off of the design floor over there. So she's got some neutrals she's cutting up for twirl around, and you'll find the pattern for twirl around in my book Addicted to Scraps. Do you realize that the book Addicted to Scraps has been out for a full year now? A year. I can't believe that it's been a year since its release already, and still going strong on that one. All right, before we sew any blocks, I have got to do this. These are my binding lengths, and I am just quickly going to join them to each other on the diagonal. Is this how you join your binding blocks? Maybe you can let me know. Let's see, can you see what I'm doing here? I'm going to tilt this just a hair more. Okay, all right, so it used to be a long time ago that I would, knowing these had to be joined on the diagonal, I would go ahead and cut the angles on my binding ends first, and then try to overlap the dog ears enough that when I sewed that diagonal seam, it would open up and be straight. And then I saw somebody doing this, where you just overlap the ends of your strips at a 45-degree angle, and you sew from V to V. And it's like, do I have thread in my machine? Yes, I do. Thank you. And once I reach that corner, I simply take this second strip end and place it on the table so that it's right sides up, and grab a second strip and do the same thing. Now, if I overlap these enough, it's very easy to see where those little V's that I need to start and stop at are, so I'm able to get a much straighter seam. If I aim for there, make sure that's straight, and then just aim for the second one. And I just put one right side up and add another one right side to it. When I'm planning my binding, I usually add one additional strip than I think I need. I cut one extra strip just because seams can fall in crazy places and you might need to adjust something somewhere. And that extra strip is my insurance policy. If I don't use it, it goes right into the 2-inch bin. Okay, so here's one more. My latest, not quite snafu, but almost. We were worried about my trip to Florida this coming week because of the hurricanes. The hotel I'm staying at opens up back tomorrow, and they say all systems are go. So I'm going on Tuesday to Florida for a Tuesday night lecture. We just found out that my boxes of books have not arrived at their destination yet. They're sitting not too far away in a warehouse, and they've been sitting for 3 days. So we're trying to find a way to get those book boxes to my lecture, or there won't be any books for a lecture or workshops at all. And it's like one of those so close yet so far things. We're hoping that they will that Monday morning it will say on truck out for delivery. But if it doesn't, we're going to have to call and see if somebody can come pick them up, if I can give them authorization. So on the box is my name in care of the guild chairperson's name. And I'm thinking if she has both of our IDs, if I send her a copy of my ID and she's got her ID, that she would be able to pick them both, all the boxes up. I've got the tracking numbers. They should be easy to locate. But I'm just happy to be going because this is one trip I didn't want to delay, especially after having to postpone Oregon. Did you see how easy this goes? They're all chained to each other, which makes it really easy to come back and snip leave the seam allowance, snip the excess off, and then just snip in between each loop, and then take the whole thing to the ironing board to press later. We won't do that now. I just wanted to get this out of the way so I felt like I was making some progress. Okay, and that's the last one. And now it can be the leader ender for what we do next. Now the machine I'm sewing on today is really quite a fun one. It's called a Best Built. It's a Japanese import made in Japan in the late 1950s, maybe early 1960s. Let me give you a good shot at what it looks like from the front. There she is. Isn't she beautiful? I love the different name brands up here, and you will find this machine from this era with several different badges. This one, you'll see it's not a decal. It's actually screwed on, which means they can put any number of names right here. But doesn't this just look so mid-century? I love this little dial. This is a straight stitch machine. I love how sleek it looks. And all I do to change the stitch length is turn this little knob. This is my reverse button. And this little button right down here will drop the feed dogs or raise them back up again. So it's just a little two toggle little thing here. What I love about the Class 15 machines is that all of the workings, all of the tensioner and the take-up lever up here, I'm trying to look at the computer screen and see what you're actually seeing. Everything is behind my field of vision, so that when I'm sewing here from the front of the machine, I don't have any moving parts that are going to interrupt my field of vision. So it makes it very, very easy to sew with. So that's what I'm sewing on, and I love this robin's egg blue. Isn't it just pretty? Just love it. Okay, put you back here. Hang on. This thing's being a little... Okay. Are we back? I think we are, except I have no head. Let's do this. Okay, so on these sugar bowl blocks, we started on these last time, and we got interrupted. Quilt-Cam ended. But what you need for these very, very simple blocks is just a couple of 2.5-inch strips and a couple of 1.5-inch strips, which I have probably lost the other one to somewhere. Okay, so we're not sewing this set because we've lost the other 1.5-inch one. We'll grab the other one. Okay, and what you do with those 2.5-inch strip sets is on your neutral one or your light one, you're going to cut two 2.5-inch squares. From the remainder of the strip set, you're going to use your essential triangle tool and cut 4 pairs of triangles ready to sew. Okay, your 1.5-inch strips are going to be sewn together in a strip set like this, and this is where I am on this one. We got these 4 triangles sewn last time, and they're ready to be pressed. This one is going to be pressed into a strip set, and I'm just going to press that to the dark, in this case the red. What I love about these sugar bowl blocks, and you'll find the tutorial for these also under the free patterns tab, is that we're not just dealing with neutral and color. So oftentimes I'm pairing a color with a neutral, so you have that really stark contrast, but you can use a light color with a dark color and still have that contrast, and that's going to give the quilt a little bit more interest. Just give that a press there. And one of the things that I really like to do when cutting 4 patches, make sure I don't have any pleats in there is just cut that strip set in half. Okay, so these were 7-inch strips. There's a little bit of overage for trimming. Then I take half of the strip set and oppose it with the other half. So you can see that when I cut, I'm going to get 4 patch pairs matched and all ready to sew. And I only need 3 4 patches for this. So I've got my rotary cut. Actually, looks like I've got both rotary cutters. No wonder I couldn't find one. Whichever one has the best blade is the one we're going to use. And I don't know which one that is yet. I trimmed the excess backing and batting off of the quilt with one of these. If it skips, it's out of here. All right. I love a small ruler for making small subcuts. And I'm going to make 3 1/2 inch subcuts across this strip set. And they're going to be all ready to sew, ready to put through the machine with seams nested already. And there's just a little bit of overage in case I made a whoops cut or I had to straighten something out. Also, you know that your seam allowance is in the right place when that strip set measures that 2 1/2 inches that you need it to measure. So make sure that it does before you even go cutting anything. All right, and we've also got, let's do these really quick. So things have been really kind of crazy here between the rescheduling of the Oregon trip. My brother's been back in the hospital, but he's out now. His sodium levels dropped, and I said, well, what, you just not eating enough potato chips? What's the deal? And he says he's just not able to regulate his own sodium content, which is, I never heard of that thing. But he went home last night, so hopefully things are better there. And with the father-in-law, they've called in hospice, and my brother-in-law lives in town, so his family's been dealing with all of that, and we're across the country. So there's just, you know, this stage of life is really a time to focus on the things that keep your sanity, because between acts of God and nature like fires and hurricanes and whatever, and an elder family reaching the end of life stage, and younger family dealing with their own issues, it can really throw you for a whammy, but you can't let it beat you. You just can't let it beat you. So I am going to really quickly sew these 3 4 patches. When I set up this machine, I did do my little 2 2-inch squares seam test to make sure that my guide is in the right place. You can't see a dang thing because of that. Okay, and we're just going to sew these really quickly. And the rest of the block will be ready to lay out because it's already cut. I think I have the 2 1/2 inch squares here somewhere. Okay, get this off of here. And I don't have another leader ender, so I'm just going to take one of these other pairs of triangles, and I'm going to use the triangles for the next pair as my leaders and enders while I'm building this one. I hear from people all the time, oh, I never thought those leaders and enders would amount to anything, but look what I did. They're amazing. And it doesn't matter whether it's with the same quilt or on a second project altogether. Okay, 3 4 patches, and my favorite part, just quickly rotating those seams so that you get a good spin on the back side. That's really going to help these blocks nest together when they come together in the quilt if you're going to rotate them that direction. Even if you're not rotating, as long as it doesn't make seams fight within the quilt, I do it because I get a flatter unit. Okay. Here we go. You guys like my shirt? This has been my slogan for my website since I first got a website in about 2000, let's see, what, about 1996 maybe? And it's been at the bottom of my emails for about that long. And now it's everywhere. The best things in life are quilted. This came from my guild visit to Minnesota in August. Okay, so we've got our little lovely 4 patches, and see how fun those stripes and prints are. And I'm just on my table here. Remember that with the sugar bowl blocks, I'm going to bring, can you see on my table, 2 light triangles together in a butterfly, 2 more light triangles in a butterfly. And once I've got this is my framework for the rest of the block. If you make 2 butterflies first, then you don't have to worry about which way to turn the triangle. So when it's an asymmetrical block, those can be kind of difficult. Now I'm just going to make sure that my light squares chain up the center of that ladder. So my dark squares are going to go sideways up the ladder. And that's the difference between Jacob's ladder and sugar bowl. Can you see how these 4 patches are turned? I absolutely love this funky shape that is made by the light areas coming together. It looks completely different than a Jacob's ladder. It's very similar, but also we have these solid or big 2.5-inch squares outside here. So I'm going to place these right there like that, and this block is ready to sew together. But before I do, let's check back in with who's emailing me today. Ann Mackenzie says, Quilt-Cam, missed the first 20 minutes due to unable to find how to open. Just watching today at family's house. All projects are done here, and my stash is at our RV. I want to try the sugar bowl. So welcome to you, Ann. I'm so glad that you could join us. When some people have problems finding Quilt-Cam, they don't know to look on my Quiltville page on Facebook. And I've heard that if you are on the page before I start Quilt-Cam, well, then you can't see it unless you refresh the page. So if you can't find it, the first thing that you do is refresh the page. If you have followed my Quiltville page and you have clicked show first or whatever the little and get notifications, then anywhere you are in Facebook, whether you are in your news feed or on your own page, a little pop-up should come up saying Quiltville is live. So that's a way to find your way there also. But if you aren't able to view Quilt-Cam for whatever reason, it will be uploaded to YouTube after we're done here. And then the next morning, it appears in the next blog post. So this will be embedded in tomorrow morning's blog post as well. Diane Oaks says, Quilt-Cam sewing and binding strips. So happy to catch you today on Quilt-Cam. I cut my binding strips on the angle using the easy angle tool or the essential triangle tool or whatever tool you've got. She says, then it's like sewing half square triangles. No sewing today as I'm cleaning up the studio before a busy week ahead. It's great to watch and learn during this time. I'm so glad Diane is busy cleaning her studio. I wish she could come clean mine, seriously. This side's not too bad because I spent some time in here knowing that there was going to be Quilt-Cam, but the other side, that's the side of the basement where I've got a table set up to make all of the kits for China. All of the diamonds are cut. They're matched with their paper diamonds for our hexy star blocks. And I've just got to make the little felt squares that hold the needles and the pins and the needle threader and the wonder clips and whatever, and get everything kitted up. But that side is a disaster. It's bad. So Diane, come clean for me, will you? I'd love that. Nick says, Festival of Quilts in the UK, August of 2018. She says, I'm looking forward to stalking you at Festival. Don't forget to order your Ernst and Wright scissors in advance. Is the cruise from Southampton after Festival still happening? Haven't seen anything about it. No, in fact, Craft Tours that I travel with is no longer doing cruises. They're focusing on land tours because they wanted to be a little bit different. There are so many quilt cruise companies out there, and you just can't do everything. You just can't be everything. So we're just doing land tours. I don't have any plans to be anywhere else but home after that trip to England in August of 18. August of 18. That just freaks me out. Okay, so look forward to seeing you there, Nick. And then this one is from somebody who says, I will watch Quilt-Cam tomorrow. I'm starting a Carolina chain quilt, so glad that she will catch up with us tomorrow. Monique says, sugar bowl block. Turn the top 4 patch. It's going in the wrong direction. Thank you. You guys, this is just, my life has just been this way. You know, I thought I worked so hard on one of the pattern sections I was writing, and when I went to bed and I came back and looked at it the next morning, It's like, oh, oh, I don't know. I don't know. Can't catch a break. Thanks, Monique. I appreciate it. She says, let's see, Ruth says, here's what I'm doing with all those extra cut and pressed binding strips. This quilt needs a scrappy binding. Oh, that looks wonderful. So she's got a 16 patch and hourglass going. And these are all of her binding strips. Look at that. Just look at all of that happy scrappiness. So if you save your binding ends, you can make 4 patches or 9 patches or whatever that you want to with them. And you can make a very scrappy quilt like Ruth did. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so let's sew this block together, making sure the 4 patches are across. The crazy thing is you get so used to always putting the dark squares up the chain that's just the way that things go. So I'm going to build this quilt down the block, and you've done this with me before. And I think I just flipped a seam allowance on the back of that 4 patch. I felt it go. We're not going to care right now. Don't turn. I love working with these shirt fabrics. They feel so good. This blue and yellow is a yarn dye, so it's the front, it's the same front and back. It's just such a nice fabric. Okay, and then I'm going to take another triangle pair from another block and sew it on through. I love to kit up blocks ahead. I love having the pieces cut and just ready to sew whenever I have a few moments. Okay, and then here's this block. Now I'm pressing the top row to the left, the middle row to the right, and the top row to the left, or the bottom row to the left. This one had funky pressing, and if you check my post for the free pattern of this one, you'll see why. If I want to set it the way the antique quilt was and seams need to nest, you can't press them all the way that you normally would a 9 patch. These have to be pressed so that one side will oppose the other and they will work. I do a lot of lifting of the presser foot and setting right back down because it stops a lot of the shifting that happens with blocks. We'll grab another one of those triangles. So by the time I'm done sewing this block, all of these triangles for the next block will be done. Yeah, I do that bad lick my fingers with fabric thing. So these are coming along cute. I cut off the dog ears as I go because I don't like dog ears in the block. So again, top to the left, middle to the right, bottom to the left. And now these units, these rows are all chained together, and I can easily just flip one over and sew over the other. The chaining threads don't need to come out unless I decide to press some things open. And one more triangle pair. Yeah, it's just a great way to keep your piecing continuous, even if you're using parts of the next block down the pipeline. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be part of the border of a quilt that you're already working on. Okay, that goes up. So here we are, 2 rows together, 1 more to go. I heard my phone ping. We'll take that in just a second. I usually nest the seam that needs to be nested first and then align the 2 tops where I'm starting And anything in between those 2 points just eases in if I match what needs to be matched. Sometimes I need to pin to match points. Other times I'm just living in the crapshoot. Okay. Okay, so these 4 of these done just that quickly as leaders and enders while working on the other block. So the only thing that needs to be done left with this block is the strip set for the next 4 patches for the next block. I actually probably should have done the strip set first so that I could then have the 4 patches cut out and ready to go. I'm going to be at a standstill now. But here's this one, and we'll give it a good iron press. How bad are those seams? Not too shabby, not too shabby at all. Okay, would you see this? See this? No pinning, and it matches. See this one? No pinning, and it matches. So the deal is if your seam happens where the seam is supposed to happen, and you have your seams nested, then there should very rarely be a time that you would need to pin that. Sometimes I still do. It depends. If it's star point matching star point when I'm sewing blocks together, and the seams are going the same directions, then I definitely need to pin. Okay, so this guy's got to go this way. Ta-da, as my friend Irene says, ta-da. In fact, I heard a ping. Let's see if Irene's checking on in. Nope, not Irene checking in. But Patricia checked in. She says, I'm adding rows to my tumbler leader and ender from 2 years ago, trying to finish because I've already started this year's leader and ender. Sounds like a girl after my own heart. So she's got her picture here on her sofa. See if I can biggie that. Maybe if I turn it sideways, will it go? Yep, it will. There we go. So here's Patricia's tumblers leader and ender on her sofa. Right there. Love that. I've got my tumblers quilt on our guest bed, and Emmy Lou is the one that loves that room more than anything, and I'll usually find her up there amongst the tumblers. That is just beautiful. I love it. Love it. It's awesome. All righty. Terry Lynch says bonus triangles. Love the new bonus triangle marking tool. I've been making and sewing for a while. Finally decided, holy moly, Terry. She says, finally decided on a project. Here's a picture of the first 7 blocks. It's going to be an 8x8 grid. Are you ready for this? Are you ready? Are you ready for this? So there's Terry's bonus triangles. And what she's talking about here is this little guy. Let's see if I have anything I can put it up against so you can see it. It's clear. That's the problem. It's clear. We should have made it like fuchsia or purple or green or something. This is the bonus buddy that comes in with the essential triangle tool in the package. And here's news for you guys who don't have this yet. It's on sale in the Quiltville store for $19.99. So you're saving $5, okay? 20% off. With the bonus buddy ruler, you've got the needle holes that I use for marking my seam allowance and sticking down my seam guide. So you've got seam holes for 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, and 5/8. Okay, those are most seam allowances you will ever use for patchwork or even garment sewing. All right, also on here is the bonus line for saving your bonus triangles in a usable size. So if, let's say I'm doing stitch and flip corners with squares on top of a bigger square or a rectangle, you draw your first line corner to corner, slide the bonus line up to the diagonal to draw your second line. Now those 2 lines are spaced perfectly apart to be where your seams need to be for that bonus unit to come out the correct size. And what you do, because of the turn of the cloth, you can't sew directly on the line. That's where the fabric has to fold. So you follow the directions in the Essential Triangle Tool package and you sew just inside those lines. So when the fabric folds, that line ends up right on top of your thread. Then your unit will reach the size that it needs to be. Did you know that? When you're drawing a diagonal line, that's where the fabric folds. That's not where you sew. You sew right next to it in the seam allowance, and then the line reaches over on top of your thread, then your whole unit will reach where it's supposed to be. So this is what she's talking about. She's taking all of those odd triangles that would normally be just cut off and put in a bag and sewed a second seam to get her bonus triangle. Now, if bonus triangles are in odd sizes for you and you want to trim them down, I've got something else that is entering the Quiltville store, because into everybody's life, some wonky triangles will fall. Now, if I'm going to open up this package, this is a brand new one. In fact, I have some big plans for these. My friend Janet in Texas designed this little guy because her life was overrun. I'm going to peel this wax paper right off too. Her life was overrun with bonus triangles of odd sizes, from sewing, even doing stitch and flip corners and sewing a full ½ of an inch away. Well, that leaves a really stupid size unit that needs to be sliver trimmed down to something else. So this is what Janet's come up with, and hopefully you can see the markings on here. That what you do is you place the little line, whichever size you want, and these are marked in, I believe they're marked in unfinished size. Okay, I put the line just above the seam line, not on it, just above it, so that the seam line touches the bottom of this line, because I need it to reach just a thread bigger to allow for the turn of the cloth and the height of the seam. But she takes, let's just say this was your bonus triangle right here. It's already sewn. You place that line that you want just above the seam line so that the line is touching the seam line. Trim two sides and open it up and press, and you've got the units the size that you already need. Now I'm waiting for my big shipment of these to arrive. So if they're not here, they'll be put in the store when I get back from Florida. But these little goodies sell for $12, and I can see using these again and again and again and again. It's called the Booty Ruler by Janet Plotkin. So between this guy and this guy, we've got, and this guy, about all kinds of right triangle options covered. The thing I also love about these is their size. They're not huge, so they're really easy to keep in my traveling bag when I go to sew at retreat or at the cabin or on the road. I can easily keep these with me where I go. So this is the Bonus Buddy Ruler. Essential Triangle Tools on sale for $19.99. You'll get both, and this one will be $12 when I get them in the store. Okay. Oh, another thing in the store. We've moved out 300 of these Addicted to Scraps zipper bag sets. These are the Eco Pouch sets already. And I will be putting another 100 in the store on Tuesday. Why 100 at a time? Because that's all I can get out in a day's worth of mail order. I've got a lot of irons in the fire. So how long would it take you to print invoices, address envelopes, fill the orders, and get them to the post office? I bet 100 orders a day would be all that you could handle also on a good day, So we're doing these in batches. I will have another 100 more in the store on Tuesday. You get 2 bags in the set. The small one has my pattern box kite on it. You see these nice rugged zippers? These are the really heavy toothed, good quality heavy duty zippers. The big one has Wild and Goosey, and this is the one I'll show you. It's got little box corners, so you can really stuff this full of a lot of stuff. They're made out of a very strong material that's from recycled plastic, such as water bottles. It's tough. You cannot tear this. You can't stretch this. You can't rip this. So your scissors and your sharps, your seam rippers and rotary cutters and things like that, pencils, pens, are just not going to poke through. They're just not going to poke through. So you'll find these in the Quiltville store on Tuesday. Okay? All right, let's go back to another one. Terry, I love your quilt. That's going to be gorgeous. I think you're nuts, but I can't wait to see it in January. Let's see how far you can get. Okay. Lucy says, Lucy Badley from the UK says, busy sewing houses to border this scrappy low contrast log cabin. Great to catch you live. And she's from Oxford, England. And she's got gorgeous, gorgeous colors there in her log cabin. quilt going on. Lucy, that's just beautiful. I'm so glad to be doing this on a Sunday afternoon when those folks in Europe and can join us. So glad you did. So Judy Domke says, hi, Judy Domke. I see your email address. That makes me smile. She says, midnight flight progress. May's Retreat Midnight Flight quilt needs the top and bottom final border sewn on today. I love this quilt so much. I love your sugar bowl blocks. And then she's put in capitals, not going to start another project now. I'm not. Yeah, right, Judy. I can tell you, you're gonna just do a couple blocks just to test them out. She says as she's laughing like a crazy woman. Wonderful. Oh, Judy, this is beautiful. So she's got her midnight flight. We taught this for the Quiltville fans of Washington in May. Sometimes I think May was not that long ago. Sometimes it feels like forever ago, but that was like the best week ever. It was so much fun. I can't wait to do it again in 2019. Midnight flight and more adventures with leaders and enders. And guess what you get with that quilt? A bazillion opportunities for stitch and flip bonus triangles. So always be on the lookout for those. So let's see. Sharon Smith says, thanks for doing Quilt-Cam today. I'm piecing a quilt of valor today. On my wall is Cactus Patch, which I'm setting on point. So much fun. Oh, I love it. I love it. I've not seen anybody do Cactus Patch on point. And you'll find Cactus Patch in the first Scraps and Shirt Tails book, which is also on sale for $19.99. We've also, there's actually 3 of my titles that are older titles that I've put in the sales section. I figure you better get them before they go out of print. As far as the first Scraps and Shirt Tails one now, I've got the last of the books from the warehouse here in my store. Anything ordered after these are gone is on print and demand status. And I've received a couple of the print on demand samples. They're okay, but they're not as nice as the original print book, and they're more expensive. So if you want Scraps and Shirt Tails, the first one, Scraps and Shirt Tails 2, or Adventures with Leaders and Enders, I've also dropped that one down to $19.99 in the sale section of the Quiltville store. Okay, where were we? I think I need to pull out another one to use its triangles or its strip set. We're not going to be caught in this corner again. We're going to sew the strip set first. Got my scissors in the way. I just love how these vintage machines sew. They just do so well. I'm going to press this quick. All right, remember, once you've got this sewn, you're just going to fold it in half. There's enough overage added that you can just snip it in half with scissors. You don't need to measure. And I'm dealing with my mat around this hinge on the table, so it's a little awkward here. I'm going to put these right sides together. Put the straight end over here. Dig for the ruler that's lost under all kinds of detritus. Cutting sitting down is not my favorite thing. It's just not. I do better standing up. So here's 1, 2, and there's also glare from the light that's right over my head. 3. Okay, so there's just enough overage that you don't mind pitching it out. And we're going to sew these. So we have that China trip coming up in just a month from tomorrow. Actually, a month from today, I fly to Seattle because I'm coming from so far on the East Coast that I would likely miss my connection. So I've got to go a day early. All kinds of questions on how am I going to connect? How am I going to post to the blog? How am I going to connect through Instagram or Facebook or whatever? And the one response that came back that sounds reliable is to get a VPN which is a virtual private network, personal network, something. And I think we're going to do that and give it a try. And ooh, where are we now? Okay, so we're going to use these triangle pairs now. So I'm hoping to still be able to post. I do know that I can post by email, but it will be formatted like an email, which means it'll come with my signature line at the top. It'll just, you know, look like an email. Here's the text, and bam, here's a picture at the bottom. So it might not be as much connection as we are used to on the blog, but hopefully it'll tide you over. All kinds of suggestions came, like, why don't you get guest bloggers? Or maybe you can repost some of your best tutorials or whatever, but I couldn't think of anything that didn't also include a lot of pre-trip preparation, which is time that I don't have, because when I get back from Florida, I have just a few days, and then I go off to New York to teach for 2 guilds there. And when I get back, I think I have 2 or 3 days before I leave for China. So there's not a whole lot of time to prepare posts ahead, especially when I've been trying to get this book manuscript written. So I think the thing that we're going to do is just try to stay in contact as much as possible via a VPN. So if you have experience with a VPN in China, drop me an email and let me know how it worked for you and which service that you used and how you liked it. The one I'm looking at is ExpressVPN, and they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So I figure we'll install it a couple of days before going. If I don't like it when I'm there, if it doesn't work when I'm there, I'll just come home and cancel it and get my money back. Okay, I'm going to lay these guys out, and the darks. Oh, we want to do triangles first. Okay, 2 light butterflies. Where's the other triangles? They're up here. There's one. These fabrics have really cool textures to them as well. There's the light one's kind of a homespun texture, and the yarn dyed stripe is a very nice, fine chocolate brown cotton. And browns are hard to find unless you're married to the UPS guy. Did I mention, speaking of UPS, that my packages are held hostage in Canada? Did I mention that at the beginning of this? That's what's on my mind right now. Is the packages are not too far away, but the tracking number says, due to hurricane, blah, 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 these packages are being held for a later date, blah, 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 blah. And if they're not there by Tuesday, we won't have any books available for my lectures or workshops. So we're hoping we can get them. Okay, so we're all laid out here. Remove some of this ruler stuff so that you can see. Here we are. Can you see? We made sure that the light squares of the 4-patch go top to bottom through the ladder, and that it's the light triangles that are coming here in the middle. And now I can just chain sew this block together. I need to kit a bunch of more of these up because they're really fast and fun. You also know your seam allowance is in the right place when your half square triangle is the same size as your plain square. Yep, just matches. I would say that the seam allowance is the main battle, and it all depends on how you cut and the weight of your fabrics. All right, so here's this one for next batch. I love the purple and the yellow together. Isn't that going to be fun? So not everything has to be a neutral. You can use light colors as well. And just use those triangle pairs for the, oops, don't cut that, for the next block. Don't cut that, don't cut that. Okay, we want this continuous, so we're just going to leave it on there. But you can have 2 blocks going at any one time, and one is the leader ender for the second, and it just keeps your chain piecing as continuous as possible. And lift up that presser foot and set it back down, especially if you've got a hump. If you have a hump, if there's a seam there and you just try to let that presser foot just go right on through, it's going to shift. It's going to plow that seam allowance away from where it needs to be. So just lift up that presser foot, set it right back down, and then you can take off. Nope, don't give that a turn. Darks go sideways. Okay. Alrighty, and one more triangle. Isn't that the way it goes? I always feel like I can get so much done during Quilt-Cam. 2 blocks. Look, I got 2 blocks in an hour and a half. Okay. Aren't those fun? Aren't these just fun fabrics? These plaids came in a squishy envelope from my friend Gail, and her packages from her will show up just every once in a while. She'd been cutting some up. She gave me half. She kept half. And it just happened that these were all plaids right when I was just getting started on these sugar bowl blocks. They're just going to be so fun. So all of these fabrics are Gail's. Gail, I hope you're enjoying them, because I sure am, because somebody else's new fabrics are always better than our old ones. Let's check back in here. Beautiful. Okay, so Laura Holt says, nope, Laura Holt bought a book. Okay. Mary Dieter says, Mary Dieter in Delaware, 4-inch string blocks turned into borders for my string quilt. Used a lot of leftover binding pieces. That's another great idea, to use your leftover binding strips, especially if they're an odd size, depending on what you were doing, or if they were bias, anything like that. Use them for string piecing. She says the quilt blocks are 6 by 6 and sashed with 2-inch white strips and 2-inch cornerstones. String boxes are still full. Going to donate this one to Hurricane Relief when it's finished. So here is a beautiful picture. I wonder if, can I turn that this way? Yeah, that's better. So you can see she has rainbowized these blocks by color family, and then she set them with 2-inch sashings and 2-inch cornerstones. Aren't those just beautiful? I love how the colors flow. Gorgeous job, Mary. So the blocks themselves are 6 inches finished. So cut a 6.5-inch square of foundation, string piece onto it, trim them to 6.5, and then you'll put them together with your 2-inch sashings. That is just, here's another biggie sized look so that you can see how those colors go on up the quilt. Isn't that just beautiful? I just love the scraps that end up in string quilts and in scrap quilts. They're just, when you play by color family, you can get away with an awful lot. Like that Millennium stuff, it's a color first, it's a Millennium second. Just cut it really, really narrow. All right, we're going to join these 2 sides, keeping them pressed the way they need to go. I'm going to put a little iron on that. Some of those fabrics are thick enough that they need a little bit of heat to lay flat. The homespuns especially, they tend to be a little bit bulky. Okay, so matching and matching. But try that. I'm going to challenge you this week to get friendly with your presser foot lifter, and instead of just sewing over 2 pieces and feeling the shift, if you lift the presser foot up, get the pieces right against the needle, put the presser foot down, then nothing will shift as the needle takes its first bite. So just you know, figure out the process in your mind, envision that and what happens, and you'll see. There's just a lot less shift if I can use my presser foot lifter. And I have one more triangle pair here. Okay. And this one, let's see, that was pressed. I think towards that way. I may be backwards on the last 2 seams. So match and match, and then lift and drop. And match. And okay, that's as far as we get to go on that one. Okay, who else do we have? Evelyn O'Brien. She says, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. She's recovered her chair. Let's see. Oh, that looks so cool. So she took her old sewing chair and found a beautiful piece of fabric to recover it with. And I bet that would just perk up anybody's sewing room and be really comfy. That looks gorgeous, Evelyn. I love the Celtic knot design. That's beautiful. And Connie Moore says, during Quilt-Cam, I'm trimming Tri-Rex units for Straits of Mackinac. I'm using these colors plus blue and purple. We'll need to depaper them next. So she's going to do, and this is kind of, if I turn it sideways, her picture sideways in her email. Yep, that's what I was afraid of. So we're just going to, it's just going to have to be sideways. But she's decided to do her Straits of Mackinac in a rainbow of colors. So that's going to be beautiful too. I can't wait to see it. In fact, that was the pattern that I was writing this afternoon that was giving me so much fits. So much fits, because if there's 36 blocks and there's 4 star points in each block, you've got, what is it, 288 or whatever. And so if you're doing it the paper piecing way that Quilt Maker magazine had it in their magazine, it was like, trace 288 foundations from page XX. Oh boy, they're going to shoot me. And if you do the sashings the way that I do them, it's like 567 units. So I'm going to see if they will do as many as will fit a page, so that you're copying a whole page, and we'll also give the Tri-Rex hints in there too if you wanted to do it that way. But that one has just been racking my brain, and then I killed myself over why did I make this quilt so intricate, and it's because the quilt demanded it. You can't make a quilt based on how easy it is going to be to write the directions. So sometimes you just got to suck it up, Buttercup, and hopefully the directions aren't going to scare people away, because Straits of Mackinac is probably my favorite quilt in this soon-to-be book. Gail says, fabrics. I'm watching Quilt-Cam, and I'm so happy to see you using the fabrics I sent. My friend and I went to a Goodwill by the pound store last weekend. Guess what we bought? We each got 28 shirts at $1.29 a pound and shared with each other. I'm drowning in shirts. I'd love to send you more. You know, Gail, I'll take anything that you want to send. You know, a sleeve here, a yoke there, whatever it is. You want to share some variety, I'm happy to adopt your fabric. Who wouldn't want a friend like Gail? Isn't that wonderful? Susan Wilkerson says, thanks so much for sharing your time with us. I'm not working on anything at the present time, trying to get things done in the bedroom while I watch Quilt-Cam, but hope to spend some time with my sewing machine later on this afternoon. Okay. Knowing that we're quilters, we don't think anything about this statement, but I tell you what, that Susan, I got to be careful not to read your email in mixed public. Okay. So she says, I dearly love the quilt block you're working on. I need another project, like I need a hole in the head. I'm currently working on trying to finish, and she's got in quotes here, 46 UFOs and works in progress. But you're seriously tempting me. Well, I'm just glad to help, Susan. Just glad to help. So how are we here? Oh, I think our hour is up, in fact. But I wanted to get this guy out of the machine to show him to you, so I'm just going to cheat. We're just going to cheat over that, because I don't want to have to cut 4 patch pairs before we press this guy. Okay, so if that goes that way, this goes this way. All right. This one, again, has very much a homespun texture, so the fabric's a little bit thicker on that light plaid. But isn't this fun? Aren't these just going to be great? I just love them. It's just pure pleasure to make these. It's not any harder than a 9 patch. And like I said, the directions are found under the free patterns tab at the top of the blog. So get that tutorial. There's different ways you can lay out these blocks. Have some fun with it. 2.5-inch strips and 1.5-inch strips. You've got this. If you've got a scrap user system, you've got this. If you've got a collection of shirts to recycle that you haven't dug into yet, you've got this. So try this. Try it in some different fabrics. I think it would be gorgeous in 30s. It would be beautiful in Civil War. It would even be wonderful in modern solids. So give it a try. It's about time for me to log off here before the timer goes off on Facebook. So next Quilt-Cam, when can we do that? I don't know if I'll have time before I go to China a month from now, but we're going to try. We're going to try to do a Quilt-Cam that few days between my New York trip and the China trip, just so that I can say hey to everybody before we head out. If it's still early where you are and you still feel like sewing, don't stop just because I'm ending. I may get back to this this evening. I might cut those pieces for those 5 border units that I need and get those done. Keep watching the blog. We've got some fun stuff happening this coming week, including a Quilty box giveaway that just arrived yesterday, and I dug into it. And when you see what's in this Quilty box, you're going to want one. That'll be happening this week on the blog. What else? Enjoy your September. Enjoy your Sunday. Spend some time with your family. Take a walk. Go outside if the weather's still good where you are. And most of all, stay happy quilting. We'll catch you next time from the basement. I'm Bonnie Hunter saying goodbye. Have a wonderful afternoon.